Do you have any idea what was the most difficult scene to film in Chicken Run 2? Or do you know what Kung Fu Panda and Disney have to do with the more than 2-decade delay between the two Chicken Run films? We've gathered all of that and many more amazing facts that are behind the scenes of Chicken Run 2 in this video, so you can stay informed. As we mentioned, it took a whopping 23 years for the second Chicken Run film to be completed, and one of the reasons for this, believe it or not, was a massive feud between Aardman Studios and DreamWorks. In 1997, Aardman signed a contract with DreamWorks, Disney's eternal rival, to distribute 5 films for the company. And the first of them, guess what, was Chicken Run, released in 2000, which was a huge box office success. After that, the second film in the partnership was Wallace and Gromit, another big success that even won an Oscar. But the third one was flushed away, which didn't do too well at the box office and led DreamWorks to terminate the partnership, citing creative differences, leaving 2 films behind without being produced. And one of them would probably have been the Chicken Run sequel. And all of this happened because DreamWorks needed an immediate big hit to compete with Disney. So, the company canceled the contract and decided to focus exclusively on the story of the Dragon Warrior, Po, starting the Kung Fu Panda franchise in 2008. One of the claims is that the second Aardman film of the Runaway Chickens would have been very expensive, mainly because it was a handcrafted film. In fact, it's almost that. You've probably heard that Aardman Studios uses the stop-motion animation style. And you might be wondering, but what is it after all? Basically, it's a technique where multiple photos of a character are taken with small modifications, and when quickly placed in sequence, they become a moving animation. The detail is that to create this type of animation and make a film that's 1 hour or longer, tens of thousands of adjustments are needed in aspects like lighting, image scanning, and, believe it or not, the quality of the clay used to make the characters. To give you an idea, the material used to shape Ginger, Rocky, Molly, and the gang was nothing more than a special clay, plasticine, the same one used as a children's toy that millions of kids have used for fun at some point in their lives. The estimate is that the team managed to create an average of 1 second of film per day of work. Wow, that must have been quite a task. But there's one thing that's quick and easy to do: click the subscribe button. Oh, it's also free, so subscribe and everything gets easier. Deal? In addition to all this stop-motion work we just told you about, it was also necessary to build over 100 sets. Most people have no idea, but the production team had to create 119 different sets to make the film, both in the Chicken Paradise and inside Funland Farms, where the chickens were turned into nuggets. And this is because some sets were created in digital animation, as we'll explain later in the video. Unlike the characters made of clay, these more than 100 sets were made of various materials, such as paper, wood, and plastic. And to make everything, they had to create the sets in a very small scale, especially when the chickens and humans were in the same scene, since everything the chickens used had to be made much smaller when compared to the things used by humans. But before building the sets, the team first imagines how they will look and draw them. Then the same environment is created in 3D animation. Only then is the manual construction of the miniatures and models done in the smallest details, which, we have to agree, turned out simply incredible because of how detailed they are. As Aardman used a lot of technology, much was said about the use of little robots. This idea was widely discussed, especially when images from the film's production were released, and it was possible to see robotic bodies being used during the film's production. In fact, what many people thought were mini robots being used in the scenes were actually metal prototypes on which the special clay was used to shape the characters. We can say that they were the skeletons while the clay was the muscles of the characters. Muscles and feathers. But surely the second most difficult thing to do in Chicken Run 2 was faces and expressions. As you learned here in the video, stop motion is an incredible sequence of photos taken in succession. And to make the chickens speak, it was necessary for the movement of their mouths to be perfect, which is very difficult, especially when it comes to chickens that have teeth, which doesn't happen in the real world. To make the scenes and dialogues look real, the team had to create separate models of the chickens' heads and use videos of humans pronouncing the characters' lines to mimic the specific movement of their mouths when they spoke. For this reason, the animation studio created various mouths for each character specifically. As they spoke, these mouths were exchanged for each frame, thus creating the most perfect animation possible. Furthermore, it was also necessary to remove the characters' eyes so that their expressions could be molded to convey emotions like joy, anger, surprise, or outrage. All of this was done to make the film even more realistic and meticulously perfect. We have to say that Aardman and Netflix did a great job in this regard. And to celebrate this sensational film, if you're a Chicken Run fan, even if you haven't seen the second film yet, comment down below #Cluck in true Chicken Run style. Now, you'll be surprised when I tell you which was the most difficult scene in the film. Chicken Run 2 is filled with sensational action and adventure scenes, like when Mrs. Tweety is about to capture Molly or drop Ginger's entire family into the nugget processor. But none of these scenes was the most difficult to film. According to the film's director, Sam Fell, and the production team, both the most complex set and the most challenging scene to film was the glass staircase scene where Mrs. Tweety finally appears in the film. That's because, as Sam said, the idea for the staircase came from the villain herself to highlight how powerful she was and how she stood out among everyone. So, she descends the glass staircase so slowly. The detail is that both to build such a perfect replica of a spiral glass staircase, for which even small scaffolds were used in the construction, and to create the movement of the chicken hunter descending the stairs, hundreds of hours, thousands of lighting adjustments, and meticulously choreographed movements were required to make everything perfect. All to make the entrance of the terrible villain memorable for both of us, the viewers and the chickens, who would never forget that awful woman. Green screen and CGI. Even though it's a much more handmade film than an animated one, of course, Aardman turned to CGI animation at times to create some of the scenes. But to be precise, two types of scenes were created in CGI, the simpler ones and the more complex ones. For example, in the scene where the group of chickens and the two rats are inside the corn silo, the metal walls behind them were done in computer graphics because they would look much more realistic that way. Similarly, when the chicken paradise is shown, when Ginger, Molly, and Rocky look down from above, it's a scene full of details that, in this case, needed to be done in CGI due to the richness of details and the fact that it's a miniature of a miniature. In these cases, it's understandable to use CGI, as in neither case did it compromise the quality of the film, and Aardman's production spirit was preserved. But another thing needed significant changes between the first and the second film. We're talking about the voice actors. The first Chicken Run film was released in 2000 and at the time featured a heavyweight original voice cast. To give you an idea, Rocky, who in the film was still just an adventurous rooster, was voiced by superstar Mel Gibson, famous for numerous action films from the 90s and early 2000s. The problem is that after 23 years, Mel Gibson no longer has the same voice as in the 2000s. For this reason, in Chicken Run 2, the actor was replaced by another Hollywood star, Zachary Levi, the same one who plays Shazam in the movies. Like Mel Gibson, the actress who voiced Ginger in the first film, Julia Sawalha, did not return for the sequel of the Runaway Chicken film because her voice was considered too old for the character. Remember that even though 23 long years have passed for us between the films, only 1 year has passed in the story. The actress chosen to voice Ginger was Thandiwe Newton, who has already starred in major films like Mission Impossible. And for the voice of Molly, actress Bella Ramsey, who recently played one of the lead roles in the series The Last of Us, based on the hugely successful game of the same name, was chosen to be the adventurous little chicken. But we have to admit that both in the first film and in the second, the voice cast continues to be very good. That's everything we discovered that had to be done behind the scenes to bring Chicken Run to life after more than 20 years of waiting. And even though it took a while, you can be sure that the film turned out really good, and it was a lot of fun to see Mrs. Tweety getting into trouble once again, and we hope it's for good this time. To keep the fun going, we've selected 2 more incredible videos for you to enjoy right now. I heard this one on the left is really good. Watch it and then tell me about it here.